Tonight we have a very special guest in studio with us, Mr. Jim Biller, former Saints Vice President and sports analyst extraordinaire, budding author. We sure do appreciate your time tonight. Thanks so much.
Anytime, my pleasure, Jennifer.
As we try to wrap our heads around this Bountygate scandal and what comes next for the Saints, how they can best navigate through this crisis, let me start by asking you, Sean Payton now has a week left. This time next week, his suspension begins. What does he spend this next 5-6 day span doing?
I believe he needs to be talking to his coaches, whoever they decide is going to sit in his chair for the next year. I've got to think it would be Spagnuolo, because he's the most recent head coach. He's got the experience. I don't know that, but whoever he talks to, they've got to be meeting constantly. And I would also hope he would make a phone call to Drew Brees and say, look, you can be the guy. You need the organization right now needs somebody. The city needs somebody to rally around and to bring us all out of this. We brought the city and the team back from Katrina to great effect, and now this is a similar, not nearly as obviously as devastating as that was, but there are parallels. It's a situation where we need somebody to rally around, and you can be the guy. So why don't you get that contract done and get in there?
You bring up several interesting points. Let me hit first on Spagnuolo, former head coach of the Rams, but also brand new to the Saints system. He certainly has a big challenge next year, not only to revamp the Saints D, but every time they step on the field next season, they're going to be under so much scrutiny. Can he successfully do both jobs, overhaul this defense, and also step in as an interim head coach?
Well, he can. It's been done before. If you look at Sean Payton, he was the all intents and purposes the offensive coordinator since he's been here. So being a head coach is just being the guy who makes the final decision. You've got to delegate. Any effective manager is a good delegator, and he's done a good job delegating. And I think Spagnuolo could probably step in. He's done it before. The experience factor is valuable here, and so I think it's doable. They may have another person in mind on the staff or not, but I think he's probably the logical guy.
Speaking of which, you have some unique insight into how this Saints organization runs, how Mr. Tom Benson thinks. Any chance the Saints might go outside and bring someone else in, perhaps a retired coach of some sort, to fill in for Payton for a year?
They could do anything. I just don't think they would. I think the staff's intact. You're keeping the seat warm for a year, but you hope it would be somebody that has the familiarity with the personnel, who has the familiarity with the people in the office. It is a little community, and I don't know that it would be to anybody's benefit to bring in somebody right now. Tom Benson certainly has the knowledge to step in and again be the guy to make a final decision. But they've got staff, they've got people they've delegated to, and I personally don't see a need for additional personnel
to go outside. Mm-hmm. Back to the point you brought up about Drew Brees, this is a critical signing, even more so now for the Saints. Does this give Drew even more leverage? Does it up his price tag at all? Because now not only is he going to fulfill his quarterback duties, but he's almost also going to be looked at as a co-offensive coordinator in some ways.
Well, if he wanted to hold the Saints ransom, he probably could. He could probably do that because, I would say that the Saints are a little bit more receptive to whatever Drew and his agent were asking for, simply because they need him more than they needed him before. Again, for the reasons I mentioned, I think you've got to have somebody that at least has a positive appearance or perception with the public, with the league office, with people around, somebody who can be the guy. And if he's sitting out and not participating in off-season workouts, which begin in April, if there's people still grousing about his contract, why isn't Drew signed? Why don't they give him what he wants? I think that's going to compound a very bad situation. So I think it's in everybody's interest, even if the Saints have to pay a little bit more than they wanted to get this deal done.
Can they? Do they have the finances? When you look at the salary cap, I know we don't want to get into specific numbers, but about $1 million left to play with. It almost seems like you got to cut players or do some major restructuring to have any room to do anything.
Well, interestingly enough, the Drew Brees signing could create a lot of cash for him because he's in at a fixed number right now. the franchise number, whatever the tender number is, 14.5, 16 million, whatever that number is, can be reduced simply by creative structuring of a long-term contract, because a signing bonus is prorated and the salary is taken at 100% against the cap. In other words, they could give him a contract that had a big signing bonus that spread out over 4 or 5 or 6 years, and only a prorated portion counts this year, plus a minimum salary. And then that could reduce his cap number right now from 16 million all the way down to, I don't know, 5, 6 million. So 7 million, whatever that number is. But my point is that by doing his contract now, they could create the cap room that they need to fill holes, to sign their unrestricted players, to bring a couple other players in. So nobody's mentioned that yet, but that's out there.
Very interesting point, because every numeric value counts right now for the Saints.
Absolutely.
Such a tight cap space, no wiggle room.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit, if you will, about the culture, the atmosphere surrounding this punishment. So many folks are furious about it. We've seen the Free Peyton t-shirts. There's a rally planned the first day of his suspension. This is too harsh. This is unfair. Do you think any of this has to do with legal posturing and Roger Goodell trying to set up some sort of legal defense against future lawsuits by saying, hey, look at how hard I came down on the Saints?
Right. As at the risk of alienating a couple provinces in Who Dat Nation, I'm going to say that the punishment is not excessive, and here's why. Because the league right now is facing over 660 lawsuits of former players that say that they were injured while they played. They're now receiving residual effects, dementia, psychological issues. The most recent one, if you recall, Dave Duerson, who played for the Bears. Dave committed suicide a couple months ago. His family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the NFL, stating that they didn't pay attention to the residual effects of his injuries. He had all kinds of psychological problems over the last few years, and they are saying, as have a lot of the previous lawsuits, that that's the reason. Goodell had to make a stand. He had to show the courts, show Congress that I'm doing all I can. I take it seriously. This is a severe penalty, of course, but it's a severe penalty because this is a serious issue to the league. And this, how plaintiff lawsuits get filed, and the residual effect of plaintiff lawsuits, the zillions and the billions of dollars at stake, if in fact one of these suits or two of these suits, or if they combine in a class action, go all the way to the extent of the court system, and the NFL's guilty. Well, what does that mean? I mean, what's the financial effect on the league? So there's a lot of permutations of this one issue, but the fact is that Goodell was backed into a corner. He has to show everybody that I'm doing all I can to solve this issue.
A lot of exacerbating factors, including, it appears, the fact that the Saints were less than truthful. Roger Goodell said, hey, I was lied to. How much do you think that played into it?
Oh, it played a lot. It played heavily into it. Now, he had to make a stand, but it might not have been that bad had the Saints come out and been truthful from the get-go and said, okay, you're right, we've done this, we're wrong, it was not right, and we're going to stop it, and we'll take our punishment. You know, it's not unlike you tell your kids, you know, if you do something wrong, you tell me you did it wrong, and you don't lie, just don't lie to me. If you lie to me, it's going to be worse. Well, they lied to Goodell, so it's much worse. So, you know, it's something that could have been a little bit less than it is today.
I don't think anybody will call the situation, characterize it as having any silver linings, but at least the Saints know now that they're without Peyton for the rest of the season. They have a whole off season to plan for it. These player suspensions, these player punishments, which could involve possible suspensions, the NFL has said, hey, we're going to wait for the Players Union to recommend punishments, which, Jim, means it may be months before we know what punishment the players face. How detrimental could that be to the Saints if this comes down before the season starts?
Well, it could be very detrimental. It's true that the Players Association has to be a part of any punishment that that goes against a member of their unit, and certainly players are members of the Players Association. So that could be a very, very important factor. The Saints are going to be facing punishments. There's no question. I don't know what punishments, what type of punishment. I would suspect it'll be a combination of fines and suspensions, but hopefully it wouldn't be all at once. It wouldn't decimate one, one group. It wouldn't take all the, well, it's going to take all the defensive players. It's all defensive players, obviously. So we know it's going to hurt the defensive team. So how the league and the Players Association creatively levy penalties that doesn't really hurt the performance of the team or the possible performance, I don't know how they're going to do that, and maybe they don't care.
States will just have to deal with whatever comes.
Exactly right, sure.
This is an unprecedented situation. Would you have any guess on what type of punishment players would face? 2-4 games? Could we see anyone out for a season?
Well, I have stopped guessing because if you remember on anything collective bargaining, I was on the station many times and made all kinds of predictions, and I think I batted 1,000 for Drew Brees, and after that I've batted 0-0-0. Every prediction I've made about Drew Brees getting signed early, what's happened with the penalties, things like that. I'm batting 0, so I have no idea.
You and everybody else out there.
We're all in the same boat.
Jim Miller, thank you so much for your time. We're looking so forward to your book coming out a couple months, June?
June 1, that's exactly right, Where the Water Kept Rising. It's a book about the post-Katrina decline at the University of New Orleans athletics, and recently it's got a happy ending, thank goodness.
Well, I know we will visit with you before then, but we certainly look forward to that. Thank you for your time.
Anytime, Jennifer. Thank you.